we always are operating with deference to the ultimate thing in the coffee shop, which is the customer experience. This is Keys to the Shop, episode 490, 7 things to include in daily shift work. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm always excited to have you along. Don't forget to subscribe to Keys to the Shop. You can do so just by hitting subscribe on your podcast player or on YouTube at Keys to the Shop. And don't forget to hit the notification bell on YouTube as well. And on top of that, you can check us out over at keystotheshop.com. And if you're interested in coaching and consulting for you and your business, you want to take your operations to the next level, you want to start off on the right foot or refine and improve your already existing operations, there's a lot we can do working together one-on-one. Keys to the Shop Consulting, you can just email Chris at keystotheshop.com. And of course, I want to make you aware that you also have the opportunity right now to put in an application to be considered for the next cohort of key holder coaching groups. This is a mastermind style group of 6 coffee shop owners hosted by myself. Over the course of 6 months, we meet 12 times, 2 hours at a time, to focus on member issues together. We will work on solutions. We will have accountability, camaraderie, encouragement, collective celebration. Basically, you don't have to do this whole coffee shop ownership thing alone. You can have a group of other people that are rooting for you and that you not only open up to with how things are going with your business and allow them to speak into that world, but you get to speak into other people's lives as well. So it's a give, it's a receive, it's a wonderful environment. And I've really enjoyed hosting these groups since last year, and now the applications are open. So Chris at keystotheshop.com if you want to have a conversation with me. And then if you want to fill out the application, you can just follow the link in the show notes. And you can also find that on keystotheshop.com/consulting. And I hope that we get to be talking soon. I do want to thank our sponsors. Of course, we're talking about the Ground Control Brewer at groundcontrol.coffee and the wonderful line of plant-based beverages called the Barista Series from Pacific at pacificfoodservice.com. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the episode today. But right now, I wanted to jump into today's topic, which is 7 things that you want to include in your daily work on the shift. Now, one of the things I work on with my clients a lot is figuring out how to arrange time and energy and tasks throughout the day of running a coffee shop. The running of a coffee shop is all about what you do at certain times and how to do those things and why it's important that they get done. We're talking everywhere from hospitality to cleaning to stocking and ordering, the making of the food and the coffee and all of that stuff. And there are some universally helpful practices to put in the shift work. And when I say in the shift work, I think what I mean is these are things that happen every shift and sometimes multiple times per shift, but we often just settle for open and close checklists, and everyone does everything and we just go from there. And that can actually work for a little bit until people start not pulling their weight, or somebody who's overly ambitious ends up doing all the work because the one that's a little slower to get to it but still will get to it doesn't get a chance to do it. There's a lot of things that can happen when we just rely on people's good hearts and we don't give some sort of a shape and structure to the responsibilities to make up for the variation that different baristas are going to have in senses of urgency and aptitude, whether they just started working there or they're a seasoned veteran. So this is why structures and systems exist. And so, yes, you should have an opening checklist. And that checklist should have basic tasks, but also tasks that link to SOPs, which are a bigger and more detailed version of how to do the thing that the checklist said to do. Like cleaning the bathroom, for example, is on the checklist, but how to clean the bathroom should exist on an SOP so that the person who's cleaning the bathroom is not just saying, well, this is how, my parents told me how to do it, or, maybe they've never done it at all. So they're just trying to think about the last time they cleaned anything and they get to do it as best they could, but they were never trained to. There's no SOP. You know very well that everyone's got a different way of doing things. So you've got to have your cafe's version of doing that thing. So yes, checklists are great. I would encourage you to go to other episodes of the show where we talk about SOPs for the win. We talk about creating a checklist and systems being installed in your store, systems as care. So this is kind of a through line of keys to the shop. And it's, again, one of the big things that ends up getting focused on as we work with people to help them open coffee shops, but also diagnosing, why maybe some things are going askew in cafes that need to improve their operations. And often we find that it has to do with a lack of structure around the work. And so I wanted to talk about 7 things that I think you're going to want to integrate into your practice as soon as possible. And bear in mind that you might feel, and I hope you do feel, inspired, energized, and motivated to do these things after listening. But you do have to do these things with deference to the fact that everyone's used to not doing it, which means if you do integrate these things into your business, you're going to have to do so over time and not as some kind of a one fell swoop in a great righteous sweeping motion. That's not going to go anywhere. Really, it's just too much. And we have a whole episode about workflow for change that you can find linked in the show notes that will give you some ideas of how to go about what you now and or after this are convinced that you need to do. So we're going to start with the first thing, which is the cafe check. I've heard this referred to as the cafe sweep. Basically, it's about going out into the cafe at intervals and checking on how things are. Now, what do you check on? Well, of course, you check on the most basic of things. You need to face all the retail, which is making it all look neat and pulling it forward, reorganizing it, refluffing squeezed bags of retail coffee for all the coffee bag sniffers out there, cleaning up the condiment bar a little bit, rearranging the chairs. You might need to bust some tables. You go into the cafe and you have a list of things. And there could be an SOP for this. It's called a cafe check. Now, this has to be something that happens on a regular basis that is not just up to you as the barista to determine, I feel like it right now, therefore I will do it. It has to happen on a rhythm, maybe every hour or so, or even more frequently. Get out from behind the bar as you can and do the work to check the cafe and know exactly where you're going to bounce from A, B, C, D, E, and then back to your station. So that's a cafe check. And it's important because that's where the customer lives. I've been to a cafe recently where I saw multiple people working and walking even outside in the cafe, but the same pile of dishes on the table just sat there for 30 minutes. And people even sat down at the table to wait for their beverages because they didn't have anywhere else to sit. So they had to sit next to somebody who had been there 30 minutes ago, their dirty dishes. Now, that is a failure of a system. Also, you would like to think that some of the people that were aware of the fact that there is a need to bust tables would have taken it upon themselves to go out there. And as professionals, I think sometimes we do need to make up for the lack of systems just because we want personally to grow as staff. Like I, as a barista, have a history, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well, of taking on more than is expected or required because, I'm not going to wait for my boss or my manager to give me the opportunity to improve. I'm going to take the opportunity to improve myself. And I'm not going to get all bent out of shape. Also, by the way, about the fact that they're not like spoon feeding me growth and advancement opportunities. I know that I have the opportunity to do it myself. Now, I don't want you to be in that situation. So if you're an owner, you need to make sure that these things are institutionalized in your business. So the cafe check is a major part of hospitality. In a shift break episode a long time ago, we had called Spiders, weirdly named one, but it was talking about the spider web idea that you know what's going on at all different corners of your web. I am not just aware of what's happening in front of my face behind the bar. I'm actually aware of all of the feedback being given to me, little disturbances in the far-flung corners of the cafe. On my mind, I want to have at least 3 things that I'm going to do next. And that might be a drink, it might be a task, it might be a question that needs answering or a message that needs delivering. But as a barista, you have to hold in balance the 3 next things mentality every single day, all day. It's a very taxing job. It's a very exhausting job, but it is worthy work. and is work that we can be proud of when we know we've done it well. Okay, so cafe check. That's the first thing. Put that on the list of things that is part of what we do at this cafe. Is every hour we do a cafe check, or every 30 minutes we do a cafe check. And here's what a cafe check looks like. Now, number 2 is the bathroom refresh. Now, this might be a cafe check thing, but I would put it in a separate category. And a bathroom refresh doesn't have to be a full bathroom cleaning, but it probably does have to be a partial cleaning of the most used parts. We're talking about the handles of the sink, the mirror, and the splatters that accumulate, all of the drippings from the wet hands on top of the trash can lid and on the floor, soap on the floor, the hinges and different parts of the toilet seat. So basically, we are talking about cleaning the bathroom, but if you do it often enough, it's not a deep clean, unless, there's that one customer who's just like exploding every day and we don't know who it is, but we have our suspicions. We think it's that guy. But that's just what it's like to work in a coffee shop. There is number 1 and number 2 and you just have to clean that stuff. That's part of it. If you got into a specialty coffee and working with the public in a hospitality environment and didn't think that there was going to be stuff like that, then my goodness, welcome. It's good to have you. The bathroom checklist of items on a bathroom refresh can be very specific so that you can get it done quickly. It doesn't really have to take more than 5 minutes, honestly, to do a bathroom refresh. Stock the toilet paper, stock the towels, clean things, clean door handles, and walk out. Just lock the door behind you when you're in there, and it's easy. And I will tell you, it has a huge amount of benefit for your business because I've said this before, when people come to your coffee shop, they are already taking a chance on your brand. And when they go to the bathroom in your coffee shop, they are even more vulnerable. When you walk into a cafe's bathroom and it's awful, the entire experience is ruined. I don't care where you are, and I still remember some of the worst bathrooms and the best bathrooms out there. That's why we did the whole shift break. Your bathroom stinks. So listen to that. It's a fun one. But put the bathroom refresh on the shift responsibilities multiple times per shift. And then we've got the outside cleaning. Okay. So outside cleaning has to do with the patio area, the parking. Even if you don't have a patio, you might technically not be responsible for the sidewalk or the certain portion that looks like it's connected to your business, but it's technically the landlord's responsibility. Listen, that whole idea that we hate people saying, hey, it's not my job, don't do that with your landlord. And when it comes to what the place looks like on the outside, no matter whose responsibility it is, it's a reflection of your business. Take responsibility yourself and allow and resource your staff to be able to go out and clean the tables, the trash cans out there, debris in the parking area, the window ledges, the windows. Make your cafe and the outside area beautiful by maintaining it consistently. What we end up doing with a lot of these things per shift is we wait until the very last minute and we just do it super rushed. Now, it might be very, very busy in the cafe. This is where planning and management and leadership comes in to give your people an opportunity, tools, and structures so that they at least know I'm only going to be out of the bar for like 2 minutes because I know exactly what I'm supposed to do and how to do it. That's better than I'm just going to go do this task where there is no structure and it feels like it's going to take a lot longer and therefore I'm going to procrastinate on it. We always are going to procrastinate on things to the last minute that don't have any shape or form because they always are going to seem bigger than they actually are. And so putting something like a bathroom refresh or the outside cleaning checklist and making that a frequent thing in the cafe is really important because it gives people not only the expectation that these things should be done, but if we find that we can't do those things, it doesn't mean that we don't do them. It means we innovate a way in our shift for a manager to cover somebody or for there to be more coverage to make sure we're maintaining our cafe, which is one of our most important assets. We're trying to avoid getting to this place where the cafe just devolves because we're so busy. Part of being busy means not only carving out time to do the task of making the stuff that people are demanding, but to also carve out time and resource to take care of the space in which those things are taking place. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the coffee. Not only, of course, do we want to maintain the quality of our coffee in terms of knowing roast dates. I encourage people writing the roast date in a dry erase marker on the hopper so we're aware and we can track quality and we're not mixing roast dates in the same hopper. Like, please don't do that. We are also scrubbing, backflushing with water, and dropping screens and screws and replacing with new ones every hour. And I know that seems like a tall order, but once you get in the habit of it and you've got some extra screens and screws on the side and you get in this habit of cleaning throughout the day, your coffee is going to taste better. That is a promise. If this is something you're not doing, it is a promise I will make you. Your coffee will taste better when it's coming from a clean machine, but new habits sound very intimidating when you're busy. If you say, I have to change the screen and screws, it feels like, oh, even though it took 30 seconds, it feels like an eternity. It's not an eternity. The benefit far outweighs the difficulty of doing this, and it's really not that difficult. And it's not a soap backflush either. In fact, some people actually do a soap backflush between shifts, which I'm actually not opposed to doing. It takes a lot longer to get the soap out, right? But if you know there's a predictably low time where you can get away with that, why not? Why not? Because this stuff accumulates in the machine and it will throw the flavor off. It is a game of very marginal differences between a cafe that just has the it factor in their coffee and a cafe who allows that, I don't know what it is, but there's something weird about that coffee. So you're either going to be keeping this accumulation in check by cleaning, or you're going to allow that accumulation to build up and then have a massive clean at the end of the day, where the only people who really get to experience how your coffee tastes on a clean machine are people who come to the cafe in the morning, and the rest of the cafe's customers just get the dregs. So scrub the gasket, get the water backflush going, screens and screws get dropped. You are going to put new screens and screws in every hour. Just have a rotation going. Now, on top of this, of course, we all know you get a new roast date, you're going to be dialing in that coffee again. So you have to be careful about this. But the other thing is just generally dialing in. And when it comes to what we're doing for a dial-in, this is something that has to happen throughout the entire shift. We're going to make big changes when we have different roast dates. Sometimes when there's a huge swing in like outdoor spaces, there might actually be some impact of weather on the coffee, although that's disputed in lots of different places. But let's just say that there are occasions where you need to make big adjustments to the coffee. You know, all things being equal, those big changes usually are the result of things outside of your control. You're not going to be wanting to make big changes based on the fact that you're doing something wrong in the preparation of the coffee. So you have to make sure and be meticulous about the fact that you have done the right thing. You have distributed well, you have tamped evenly, you have inserted gently, you have started the extraction as soon as it gets into the group head. Do all to make sure that you are not the problem. And at that point, you still are going to, because of just the nature of coffee and the fact that blends often will be made up of different portions of the coffees that are blended in it, and the burrs in the grinder heat up, and that heat will affect the oils in the coffee that will resist the water pressure at different rates. You are going to have to do micro dialing all throughout the shift. That doesn't mean you throw shot after shot out, because it's not exactly 28 seconds at 2 ounces and so forth. You have a window of acceptable extraction. Your job is to keep it as close to the center as possible and to notice when it starts to edge toward the lower or upper limits of acceptability and do tiny bits of dialing in throughout the entire shift. That means you have to pay attention to how the shot is extracting. And if you just tell people to do that all shift, it may happen. Somebody might be really intentional enough to focus that much on the coffee, but at least you can tell people, you know, after every rush or every 30 minutes, we're going to just make sure that the coffee is tasting good, or dial it in a little bit, tiny bit. You know, it might not need it, but you at least know you're going to put intentional eyes and effort on the coffee. in lieu of just that quantifiable every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes or after every rush, you just want to be paying attention all the time and dialing in the entire day, not in the sense of throwing shot after shot out. Again, big adjustments, but then keep it in the center of the acceptable ranges as much as you possibly can through just little adjustments. You don't need to throw the next shot out. Just because you adjust the grind a tiny bit doesn't mean, oh, I can't serve that shot. It's not the ultimate and most perfect. It may be a moral dilemma more to a new barista, but to a seasoned barista, I think we all know there is an acceptable range. So dialing in is something we do all day. It's not just something we do in the morning, and then we're forced to do it if something changes in the coffee. It's a part of our constant task. Hey everybody, it's Chris. So I wanted to take a moment to talk to you a little bit about our sponsors today, starting with the great folks over at Ground Control at groundcontrol.coffee. So this machine, the Ground Control Brewer, has not only elevated batch brew coffee by opening up through its award-winning technology a whole range of flavors that previously other batch brewers just couldn't access, but also the extraction capabilities allow you to make batched iced lattes and batch cold brew by creating batched espresso concentrate and also batch cold brew concentrate. So it is not only a level up of coffee quality, but it also is a level up in terms of productivity and innovation. So if you're interested in having this machine in your store, again, check them out at groundcontrol.coffee to learn more. Reach out to them and see if this is the right fit for you. If you're looking for an all-in-one machine to help open up possibilities in your coffee shop, then you need to check out the Ground Control at groundcontrol.coffee. Now, also, I wanted to thank and recognize Barista Series. The Barista Series line of plant-based beverages is designed for baristas and tested by amazing baristas before it even reaches your shelf. So it stands up to the heat from steaming, has amazing texture for latte art, and also the balance of the flavor of the coffee in a final beverage is focused on the coffee. Right? It's not like overwhelming. The plant-based beverage is not overwhelming. So that is a huge asset. Those three things, on top of the fact that this company is like the foundational plant-based beverage in the industry and is preferred by baristas worldwide. Check them out at pacificfoodservice.com, get samples and try it for yourself. If you are looking for the best plant-based beverages for your customers, then I think the Barista Series is a wonderful choice. Okay, now back to our episode. The next thing that I want you to put into practice in your shift, where actually this has to do with a transition between shifts, is a shift change checklist. Now, what a shift change checklist is meant to accomplish is mitigating the chaos that usually comes from the incoming crew relieving the outgoing crew. Everybody is taking their aprons off and they're cashing out their tips and they're exchanging greetings and all this other stuff. And it feels like just a whole mess. I've seen customers just sitting there like, I don't even know who to talk to right now. By the way, you shouldn't have your barista clocking in on the POS that orders are being taken from. In today's day and age, tablets are cheap. There really is no reason why you can't have a clock-in station away from the place where we are providing the first impression of our hospitality. I mean, really, this has to be something that we look at like dial-up internet in the future. I wish I would never see that again, people clocking in on the customer POS. Anyway, a shift change checklist has a couple of different sections. 1 says incoming crew, 2 says outgoing crew. And there's a bit of an overlap there. So the incoming crew has a responsibility often of taking over for tasks that the outgoing crew then has a responsibility of giving to that person, but also informing them about what's happening. It could be about inventories or we're out of this, that, and the other thing. Here, how's the coffee pulling? How's it tasting? And in that moment, we've transitioned from one to the other and we put ourselves into other tasks. Outgoing crew does things like maybe there's an order process that you do, or you have a couple of drawers that you use, right? Incoming crew takes their drawer, they put it in the POS. Outgoing crew takes their drawer and they go and they count and they do a deposit, or there's a lot of things that you have to assign to each group. Don't go nuts. make it possible for them to actually get out on time. But there has to be some structure to this, all in service of preserving the experience that customers are going to have, even though we're changing shifts. We don't just pause hospitality simply because we are changing shifts. We always are operating with deference to the ultimate thing in the coffee shop, which is the customer experience. So having a shift change checklist and an order that things happen is critical, and it's something that I give to all of my clients, and we work on doing that is customized for their coffee shop and the stuff that they're serving. And it has to make sense. You have to put the work into it to make it custom for you, but I do think that it's something you have to have. Now, the seventh thing here is more of an idea, and it is that your checklists, like the open and the close, could be the shift change too. You might have also a mid-shift checklist. A lot of people have that. They, I think, need to be timed. They have to have timestamps that say, at this time, start this thing. And we should really know how long it takes to do these tasks. That's why we get in trouble with closing shifts. We just dump a bunch of stuff onto the closers, and it feels really impossible to get it all done. And it's a no-win situation because we're like, hey, this is a 2,000 square foot facility that you have to mop by hand on your hands and knees. And there's 75 tasks, but you have to be out in 30 minutes and you're closing by yourself. Well, that is impossible. And for a lot of our coffee shops, we have put closers in impossible tasks because we don't actually know how long it takes to do these things, and therefore we feel no qualms about throwing them into a checklist. So first, you should know how long it takes to do a thing, and not just in isolation. Like, it takes me maybe 1 minute solid, and it could take less time today to make a latte from start to finish. And if you're hustling, that's just average. But if you're in the midst of work and you are tired and it's the end of the day, there's other things on your mind and someone's asking you a question, your capacity to be efficient and effective in those things is diminished. So you have to add a little bit of room for atmospheric drag on even the most ideally timed things. But you still have to give marks of saying 2 hours before close, or even 3 hours before close, 2, 1, even up to 30 minutes, 15 minutes. Let customers know politely and kindly about how we're going to be closing up in X number of minutes, that kind of thing. It needs to be timed because what ends up happening for a lot of our shifts is we leave it to the last minute. But if we give these things timestamps and we say they're going to happen at certain times of the day, we know it's coming. And we can organize our time better around those milestones of the day. And it makes it a lot easier for us to feel like, oh, I have some clarity around my next task. Instead of wondering about getting to these 15 things, I know only about 3 of those things require my attention right now. Now, one thing again that I'll say here, I say again because we've said this before, include your staff in the creation of these systems. Give them what you've created and say, what do you think about this? And what would you add to this? Get feedback because it's going to work for them. Now, that doesn't mean that every piece of feedback is integrated into the mix, but there is a lot of stuff that they're going to reveal to you and say, oh, we can't really do that because we've been told by our manager that that's not a thing that we do. And you're like, what? Who said that? And you discover all this stuff. You're like, oh, I didn't know that was broken, or I didn't realize that there was that rush coming in recently because normally we don't get busy at that time, but it looks like things are changing. I'm so glad I talked to you. So that's why these things are living documents. And getting that kind of feedback from the people who are working every day on these shifts to contribute to the stuff that they're going to be responsible for, I think is just wise. So time-based lists is really important. Now, the last thing I'll say here as a bonus is all of this stuff requires time. So let's go right back to the beginning where I was saying we are going to, just like our last shift break, talk about setting people up for success. This means if it takes them an hour to close the store, it's okay if you know that they're doing really good work. You don't want people to be just taking their time, dragging their feet, doing no pre-close work, and they could be doing better. Lots of times this is what happens. It's truly not just the system or the owner or the manager. Sometimes baristas are definitely dragging their feet and not being responsible, okay? But other times, and many times, really hardworking people are doing their darndest to actually get the work done, but they don't have time to do it. You got yourself a big coffee shop and a lot of things to do with an unrealistic timetable and an unstructured distribution of work throughout the day from openers to mids and closers. People just don't have time to do it. And they want to do this stuff. I think people get real demoralized. They get demoralized because they enter in with the intention, I'm going to work at this coffee shop and I'm going to do a good job. I know not everybody is that way. I know sometimes people just want the chill job, and it's kind of on you for hiring them, okay? But for the most part, I think if you've hired well, you got people who want to do a good job. Now it's just a matter of setting them up with the time to do the work well. And if it requires extra money for labor to get that cafe clean, and you've done all you can to optimize your checklists and processes, and it still requires a lot of time, then that's the way it is. It's not worth frustrating your staff over. Just drive more marketing and business to your cafe. I say just, it's not as easy as that, but truly, if you are in that position where you feel like it's taking people too long to close, but they're doing the best they can with what they've been given and the size of the space, then you need to make up for the cost that it takes to run your coffee shop that their work has revealed to you is, in fact, what it takes by driving revenue. So you don't want to nickel and dime people's energy. You just need to drive revenue. If you're worried about the labor cost, at a certain point, the business needs the labor that it needs. And you're either going to change the structure of your business or you're going to change the income of your business. But if you try to force people to do things that are impossible to do and gaslight them into thinking that it's actually their fault for not being able to do the impossible, eventually you'll just lose those people. All of this said, you've got the cafe check, bathroom refresh, outside cleaning, dropping those screens and screws and doing that water backflush throughout the day. You've got the dialing in of coffee throughout the day, shift change checklist. Make sure that those lists are actually time-based and give people the space and ability to do this work and resource them well. And I think by doing all of this, you're going to see a major difference in morale, in clarity. It's going to make the customer's experience way better. And eventually, it's just going to be part of the daily work. At first, it'll feel like, oh, this is an effort. This is an effort. I have to change some behaviors. Yes. But eventually, we are adaptable. We become more resilient. We rise to the challenge. And then all of a sudden, it's just our culture. It's just how we do things, and we do things well. And this is part of the way that you get to do things well. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. And that's also where you can reach out if you're interested in Keys to the Shop consulting, if you want to work one-on-one with myself, or you are interested in putting in an application to be a part of the key holder coaching groups that are going to be opening up and starting another cohort in September. Toward the end of September is when the groups start. And I think this is, if you're a coffee shop owner and you've been in business for a little bit and you want community, accountability, and the ability to receive great insight, but also speak into other people's lives based on your experiences, key holder coaching groups are a great way to do that. Reach out or click the link in the show notes to put your application in. And lastly, one place to go for community is Coffee Fest. You might have heard about Coffee Fest. 30 years they've been running, since 1992. So it's over 30 years. What is it, 32 years? Yeah, see, I can do math. It's kind of like those moments where customers like all of a sudden pull out 3 pennies and they're like, actually, I have 3 pennies. I'm like, no. But yeah, 32 years of Coffee Fest is one of the best. I think it's the best place to go in terms of value for your money and what you get from the free or accessibly priced trainings, workshops, panel discussions, lectures, rub elbows with like-minded professionals. And also the trade show floor gives you access to great vendors to talk about things that you might want to put in your coffee shop, machines and products, etc. And great cities to visit, bring your team, go check out some coffee shops. And it's really a scene. I love Coffee Fest, and I will be there at the LA show and also Minneapolis coming up. So coffeefest.com, use the code SPK50 to get 50% off your general admission. and say hey to me. I'll be giving some talks and whatnot there, so maybe I'll see you at LA or Minneapolis at Coffee Fest. Check them out at coffeefest.com. And with that, that is the end of our show, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.